Yo, Eastern Europe, beautiful place, complicated history. Let's talk about the time they tried to make communism work. Picture this. Karl Marx, beard game strong, writing a book about equality. Everyone shares, everyone's happy, right? Spoiler alert, not so much. Turns out running a country on good vibes and shared resources is like trying to pay rent with compliments. You'll get a lot of smiles and an eviction notice. Now, Eastern Europe after World War II was like that friend who just got out of a bad relationship with fascism. They were vulnerable, their infrastructure was shot, and along came the Soviet Union, whispering sweet socialist nothings in their ear. Suddenly, factories belonged to the people. Theoretically, private property. So last season, comrade, everyone got a job, sure, but it paid about as much as a hamster on a wheel makes in electricity. The problem with sharing is, well, nobody likes sharing. Especially not when the government decides how much bread you get. And don't even get me started on the toilet paper situation. Let's just say, things weren't exactly peachy keen behind the Iron Curtain. But hey, at least everyone was equally miserable. Equality achieved. So, the Soviet Union, they were like that friend who's always got your back, but their idea of helping is moving in and borrowing your stuff, indefinitely. They rolled into Eastern Europe with their tanks and their ideology, ready to spread the communist love, Soviet style, and by love I mean control. Elections? We don't need no stinking elections. Freedom of speech? More like freedom to agree with everything we say. The USSR was all about unity, their kind of unity, where everyone had to wear the same shoes and sing the same songs about tractors. Don't get me wrong, some people were totally into it. Free healthcare, free education, guaranteed job. Sounds great on paper. But the reality was more like, you get free healthcare if the one doctor in your town isn't busy, you get free education on how to operate a tractor, and your guaranteed job is probably in a coal mine. Imagine trying to tell your life story with only 3 crayons. That was Eastern Europe under Soviet influence. Sure, they built some impressive buildings, brutalist architecture, anyone, but they also built walls, both literal and metaphorical, that kept people in and ideas out. Now, Eastern Europe wasn't just going to roll over and become a Soviet copycat. They had their own style, their own cultures. It's like trying to make a Russian doll wear lederhosen. It just doesn't quite fit, does it? Each country under communist rule found its own way to cope. Poland had its Solidarity movement led by a charismatic electrician named Lech Walesa. Solidarity was like a trade union on steroids. They went from demanding better working conditions to demanding, actual freedom. The Czechs had their socialism with a human face, which, let's be honest, sounds like a marketing campaign for a diet soda. It didn't last, by the way. And then you had Romania with Nicolae Ceausescu, who was basically the communist version of that one kid in school who always took things way too far. He built a palace so big it needed its own zip code while his people were struggling to get by. Let's just say, things got messy. Section 4. Revolts and revolutions when enough was enough. Imagine living on a diet of stale bread and government propaganda. Eventually, you're going to crave something more flavorful, even if it means risking a little indigestion. That's what happened in Eastern Europe. People started getting hungry for freedom, for a taste of that Western-style democracy they'd heard so much about. In 1956, the Hungarians staged an uprising. They were like, "We're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore." Sadly, the Soviets weren't really into anger management. They rolled in with tanks and crushed the rebellion. Fast forward to 1968, Czechoslovakia tries that socialism with a human face thing. The Soviets were like, nope, socialism only has one face, and it's ours. Tanks again. It was starting to feel like a very one-sided game of Risk. But here's the thing about hope, it's hard to crush. The desire for freedom is like a weed. You can try to pave it over, but it'll find a way to poke through the cracks. And in 1989, those cracks turned into gaping holes. Section 5. Faces of the Iron Curtain, the good, the bad, and the censorious. Now, it wasn't all doom and gloom. Even in the land of breadlines and censorship, there were bright spots. Artists found ways to express themselves, even if it meant hiding their messages in abstract paintings or subversive poetry. Musicians created music that spoke to the soul, even if the lyrics were about, the joys of collective farming. And then there were the leaders. Oh, the leaders. We had the hardcore Stalinists who ruled with iron fists and even ironier mustaches. We had the reformers who tried to loosen the reins a little only to get yanked back by Moscow. And then there was Tito of Yugoslavia. who basically told the Soviet Union to shove it and did his own thing. Tito, you were the cool uncle of communism. Never change. But let's be real, life under communism wasn't exactly a picnic. Unless your idea of a picnic involves government-issued bread, lukewarm vodka, and the constant fear of being reported to the secret police by your neighbor for telling a joke about the 5-year plan. Section 6. The wall falls, the Trabant stays, the end of an era. By the late 80s, the Soviet Union was like that one friend who shows up to your party, drinks all your vodka, and crashes on your couch for a decade. People were over it, the Berlin Wall fell, and with it, the whole communist house of cards came tumbling down. It was like watching a game of Jenga, except instead of wooden blocks, it was decades of oppression and bad fashion choices. Suddenly, borders were opening faster than you could say perestroika. People were tasting freedom for the first time, and let me tell you, it was sweeter than a black market Snickers bar. They were like, wait, we can travel, we can vote, we can wear jeans without getting arrested? But transitioning from communism to capitalism wasn't exactly a walk in the park. It was more like a walk through a construction site with a few potholes and detours thrown in for good measure. There were economic growing pains, political uncertainty, and a whole lot of people trying to figure out how to use this newfangled thing called the free market. Section 7, From Red Square to Blue Jeans, Life After Communism. So, what happened to Eastern Europe after the communist experiment went bust? Well, they traded in their Breadlines for Starbucks lines. They swapped their Trabants for Toyotas, except for those nostalgic hipsters who still drive Trabants because irony is a thing. They embraced democracy, even if it meant dealing with things like traffic jams and political debates. It wasn't always pretty. There were economic disparities, political corruption, and a whole lot of people trying to figure out how to build a new society from the rubble of the old one. But they did it. They rebuilt, they reformed, they reinvented themselves. Eastern Europe today is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. They took a system that was supposed to be a utopia and turned it into a cautionary tale. They learned that freedom isn't free, that democracy is messy, and that sometimes the best way to move forward is to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Because hey, if you can't laugh at a giant statue of Lenin, what can you laugh at?